What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons in Black Ops 4 multiplayer. In today's episode, we're going to be covering the final shotgun and also the last of the weapons that launched with Black Ops 4, and this is the SG12. Starting it off, as always, let's have a look at the damage profile, and the damage with the SG12 is extremely complicated. It's not quite like the other shotguns. It is similar in the sense that we do have a base damage as well as a per pellet damage, but these values are kind of all over the place and it gets very confusing. So what I have here are estimates. It's still going to give you a good indication of how many shots it's generally going to take to kill. But I'll be honest, I wasn't able to completely crack the code on this because it seems like each individual pellet is dealing a different amount of damage at longer ranges, which is extremely confusing. So our base damage ranges from 40 up close all the way up to around 25 as far as I can tell at the longer ranges, and our per pellet damage up close is going to be 12 per pellet, and then at longer ranges it deals roughly 5 per pellet, although like I said, there's something really strange going on at those longer ranges. Also keep in mind the SG12 without attachments has 6 pellets per shot. Our rate of fire with this shotgun, which is semi-auto by the way, is 210 rounds per minute, and this gives us a statistical minimum time to kill of 286 milliseconds in the 2-shot kill range, 571 milliseconds in the 3-shot kill range, and then beyond that it keeps dropping significantly for every extra shot it takes to kill. It will take a minimum of 2 shots to kill and a maximum of 5. So if you manage to get a 2-shot kill, you've got an excellent time to kill in this game. However, anything more than 2 shots to kill is going to give you a very slow time to kill. As for armor, generally speaking, when you come up against an armor user with an SG12, it will normally take you 1 extra shot to kill, but not all the time. There are some situations like if you hit all the pellets up close, it will still be a 2-shot kill against armor users. This brings us to our ranges, and as you can see here, we have 3 different range chunks. Within that first really small range chunk that ranges between 0 and roughly 2.5 meters, this is your really consistent 2-shot kill range, where you're going to be dealing between 52 and 112 damage, so as long as you're hitting the majority of your pellets, you will be getting a 2-shot kill. Then after that, we have the next range chunk, and with this one, you do still have a 2-shot kill potential, but more often than not, it's going to be a 3-shot kill because you're more likely to be missing a few pellets here and there, and also your base damage drops off in this range. And then finally, we have that little range chunk on the end. This is where it's going to be a 3+ shot kill range. And generally speaking, at this range, it is going to take you more than 3 shots to kill. As for long barrel, all this does is it extends your maximum hit potential. It doesn't increase your 2-shot kill range or that short range where you deal a more consistent 2-shot kill. It has no effect on that. It only has an effect on your hit potential. As for the max load attachment, this takes each shot from 6 pellets up to 8 pellets. And essentially what this does is it just improves your consistency all around. So now that range where you could technically get a 2-shot kill, but it was mainly a 3-shot kill, you'll be finding that you get far more 2-shot kills within this range. So the max load attachment is excellent in core game modes. As for hardcore, the SG12 is always a 1-shot kill in hardcore game modes unless your enemy has armor equipped or they have their health boosted by crash. What this means is even with long barrel, that will extend that 1-hit kill potential because all you have to do is hit your enemy. And also, I didn't put max load in this because max load is practically useless when it comes to this. It may help in some very specific situations at really long ranges against somebody using armor, but that's an edge case and I wouldn't say that it's worth using the max load attachment for. So long barrel is great in hardcore, max load is completely unnecessary. As for headshots, just like with all of the other shotguns, we don't get increased damage to the head, and therefore headshots are literally useless. Although I will say, because I had some people calling me out on this in a previous shotgun episode, and they were saying that it is useful if the enemy has armor, and I would still say it is not worth aiming for the head, because when you're aiming for the head, you're much more likely to be missing lots of pellets, and therefore missing out on a bunch of potential damage, and you'd be better off just aiming for the center of the body and maximizing the number of pellets it hits, and then just deal with the fact that that armor is going to be reducing your damage slightly. This brings us to Hipfire, and as you can see here, the SG12 has the same Hipfire spread as the other shotguns in the game, but we have the ability to use Laser Sight 1 as well as Laser Sight 2, and Laser Sight 1 will reduce that by 40%, and Laser Sight 2 will reduce that by 60%. Now this is different than the Laser Sight 1 and 2 that you would see with some of the full auto guns, where they have the exact same spread, but Laser Sight 2 just makes it so your Hipfire spread doesn't increase when you're moving. But with shotguns, your Hipfire spread never increases when you move in this game, and that's why you get an even tighter spread when using Laser Sight 2. As for hipfire versus aim down sight when it comes to your spread, you do get a roughly 30% tighter spread if you aim down sight with the SG12, assuming you aren't using any attachments. But I also wanted to show you guys the difference between using laser sight 1 and hip firing versus aiming down sight. It turns out in this case, you're actually losing some of that spread when you aim down sight. And this is even more pronounced when you're using laser sight 2. When you aim down sight, you're going to get a significantly wider spread than you would if you were hip firing with laser sight 2. Moving on to our magazine capacity, we get 6 shells per magazine with a 24 total starting ammo, and with extended mags we can bump this up to a 10-round magazine with 40 total starting ammo, and finally extended mags 2 will increase this up to 14 rounds per mag with 56 total starting ammo. Our reload add time is right around average for the shotguns at 1.77 seconds. This isn't extremely fast or extremely slow, it's just kind of in the middle. As for our aim down sight time, this is 250 milliseconds, which is standard for shotguns, and generally you don't have to worry about aim down sight time too much, because in most situations you don't need to be aiming down sight. And with our sprint out time, it's actually the same at 250 milliseconds, which once again is standard for the shotguns in this game. If you want to decrease that sprint out time, you can use the Gung Ho perk, which will reduce this down to 160 milliseconds, which is actually just very slightly slower than the other shotguns, but it's still a great benefit to be having Gung Ho when using the SG12. Our movement speed is standard for shotguns at 100%, and same thing goes with our aim down sight strafe speed. This is also standard at 77%. So that pretty much covers it for the standard stats for the SG12, but now let's move into the operator mod, and this is the Strobe Light. Now the Strobe Light on the SG12 is activated by hitting the aim down sight button. It actually replaces your ability to aim down sight, so you can no longer aim down sight, but you can activate this flashlight. And when you're shining it towards an enemy, it looks like this. It has a range that is pretty much equal to your hit potential with the SG12 at about 12.5 meters. And it does get brighter as you get closer to your target, although this has been nerfed a couple times now, at least on the console build of the game, so it's not nearly as bright as it used to be. Now, the main benefit of the Strobe Light, at least on the console build of the game, isn't for blinding your enemy, it's for eliminating your enemy's aim assist. Once you get within that 12.5 meter range with the Strobe Light, it completely disables any aim assist that the enemy has as long as you're pointing it in their general direction. And it's one of the reasons that it's a very powerful attachment on console, but not so much on PC, because it's pretty easy to just shoot at the light on PC. So that's the operator mod, but now let's get into the other attachments. For optics, we have the ability to use a reflex sight, but I would never really recommend it. It's generally not worth aiming down sight, especially if you're using one of the laser sight attachments, which I will be recommending for this gun. And therefore, I literally never use the reflex sight on this gun. As for the other attachments, extended mag is great on the SG12. It's really nice in core game modes if you're dealing with multiple enemies that keep coming at you. I will say that extended mag 2 is a little bit overkill. Usually just having one of those is just fine. But if you really wanted to, you could use both. Laser sight is an excellent choice on the SG12 in core game modes only. You never want to be using laser sight in hardcore modes because that just makes it harder to hit your target. And really all you have to do is hit one pellet anyways, so you want the widest spread possible in hardcore. But in core game modes, I highly recommend using at least one of the laser sight attachments. You don't necessarily have to use both, but at least one of them is really nice to have. Steady grip reduces your recoil while hip firing, and I feel that's completely unnecessary, so I would never really bother with that. Long barrel, I don't necessarily recommend in core game modes because if you're at that range, you're going to be losing that gunfight 9 times out of 10 anyways, regardless of whether or not you had long barrel. But in hardcore modes, I would highly encourage you to use long barrel because that does improve your one-shot kill potential. This just leaves us with max load, which is an amazing attachment for core modes, and I would highly encourage you to use it. But once again, this is the type of attachment where in hardcore modes, it's really not doing anything for you. And that's going to wrap it up for all of the attachments. Now let's get into a couple great example classes I have for you guys with the SG12. First up, for core game modes, this is a great way to run the SG12. We've got extended mags, laser sight, as well as max load, so we're going to get relatively consistent 2-shot kills as long as we get ourselves nice and close. The laser sight attachment is great, so we don't have to aim down sight to get that tighter pellet spread. And extended mags is really nice if we happen to run into multiple enemies and we don't have time for a reload between those gunfights. Our gear on this one is going to be stim shot so we can get back in the fight as soon as possible after taking damage. Also, it's really nice to be able to keep hip firing while using the stim shot because this gun you're going to be hip firing with anyways, so you can actually stay in the fight while also simultaneously healing yourself. Equipment is going to be special issue. Our perks are going to be scavenger because in core game modes, it's often going to take you 3 to 4 shots before the enemy is comfortably dead. Sometimes you shoot that extra shot after they're dead just to be sure that it's going to kill them. And therefore you will burn through ammo relatively quickly if you start going on a streak. We've got Gung Ho on there, which is highly recommended for a shotgun class, as well as Dead Silence, so the enemies can't hear you coming and you'll be able to hear what's going around you a lot more effectively. Now finally, you'll notice I do have an MX9 on there. That's mainly just because I had an extra class point and nothing else to spend it on, so I thought might as well throw on an SMG, something that you can swap to relatively quickly, and you can use that to finish off an enemy, or if you just get in one of those situations where you get locked down in a slightly longer line of sight that's outside of the effective range of your shotgun, you can pull the MX9 out and challenge that enemy. And that pretty much covers it for the core class I'm going to recommend in this video. Next up, we have a hardcore class, and the SG12 absolutely excels in hardcore modes. With this, we're going to be using extended mags as well as long barrel. These are the only two attachments you really need in hardcore modes. Actually, a lot of the other attachments are detrimental in hardcore modes. For our gear, we've got body armor, which will sometimes allow us to soak up a bullet that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to soak up in hardcore. Equipment is once again going to be special issue. For perks, we've got Tac Mask on here, mainly because we don't need to use Scavenger because we've got 40 rounds to start with, and since it's always going to be a one-shot kill, you're generally just firing 1, maybe 2 shots per enemy, and therefore you can go on a very long streak before you run out of ammo. Gung Ho, once again, going to be our tier 2 perk. It's pretty much a necessity on a shotgun class. Dead Silence for the same reason as the other class, and finally Team Link, which is amazing in hardcore modes because you can see where your teammates are, which will help you find enemies and prevent those accidents where you shoot your teammates if they surprise you. Once again, this did leave us with 1 extra class point, and I decided to throw that on a GKS just because that's an excellent SMG to be using within hardcore modes, and we don't need any attachments on it, so it's great for that. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the SG12. As always, I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about this gun? Personally, I find the SG12 with the Strobe Light to be very annoying because it disables your aim assist, which can just really throw you off. I'm still not really a fan of this, although I do have a couple classes that I use that are excellent counters to this. But aside from the Strobe Light, the SG12 isn't really all that good in core game modes, and in hardcore, it is very good, but now that we have the Rampage is actually a better choice for hardcore modes. Now, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, we are finally caught up. I've covered every gun that is currently in the game. I will leave a link to the playlist down below. But of course, as new guns keep coming, we are expecting a Mini 14 to be coming at some point, hopefully within the next week or so. I will be continuing this Gun Guide series and covering those as soon as I can possibly get to them. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.